So here's a very short and brief overview of the apply stage in the AHEAD framework. The apply stage, it's a stage on from the understand stage where we've looked at the foundational skills that we need to work with AI and be obviously a critical thinker. And those still are obviously key. But in this stage, what we need to think about as educators is ensuring that when we do find something to focus on, because obviously it's only going to be in certain areas that it's appropriate, we choose fit for purpose tools and create simple, repeatable workflows. We also want to integrate AI into teaching and assessment aligned to the learning outcomes, obviously, not tech first. And we want to document prompts, inputs, and outputs and state when and where AI is allowed and why, particularly making this available and clear in the module handbook. And the model is safe, responsible use in class. That's what we want to be modeling to our students about data handling and attribution, as well as acceptable use. So, to operationalize AI in our teaching, we need to move from awareness to purposeful use in live activities and assessment. Maybe selected vetted tools and define simple, repeatable workflows aligned to learning outcomes and discipline tasks. So students will have access to Copilot in their tool set. So that's probably one to start with. You can set and communicate disclosure rules when, where AI is allowed and require prompts, data and model documentation to be considered in your outputs. And I suppose, again, modeling safe, ethical, and inclusive practice so your educator judgment remains central. And ultimately, we'd like to capture some evidence via the alignment card, which I'll show you in a minute, in terms of how it links to graduate attributes, how we tag artifacts, and governance notes are maintained. So we don't want to do too much in a module, maybe pick one or two outcomes and an authentic task where AI actually adds value, not busy work. We want to decide permitted AI use and disclosure rules and add a short policy line to the brief, as well as obviously the main handbook. Select vetted tools or low risk features and complete a basic risk validation check ourselves. And then in terms of inclusion, do we have alternatives, free tools, or is there a solution that the university offers that we can leverage? So we want to tag then the integrated curriculum design framework outcomes and the graduate attributes on our alignment card. So here is an alignment card. You can see we have the UACI level. So in this case, it's apply. We have the AHEAD dimensions targeted, the ICDF outcomes supported, graduate attributes emphasized, activity assessments, and then evidence will keep, and some equity notes and some governance points. So what does that look like? Let's take the module MKT 303, Entrepreneurial Business Venturing. We're in the apply stage. This is a level 5 module. And there's an opportunity to explore the assessment they do through thematic analysis of the interview. And we can add a workshop on thematic analysis and use of AI to perform that analysis and where it's good and where maybe it needs our oversight and where it's important that we're the human in the loop on that. They interview an entrepreneur for that task. That's an activity, an assessment task. So we can see then the ICDF outcomes that links to, the graduate attributes it informs, and also they would keep a code book and the prompts used from the process. So that is a way that you can then start to think about your task. Obviously, acceptable uses we need to think about are things like idea generation, first drafts, and pattern finding, but not final answers. We need and require the artifacts maybe in our appendices, the models and versions they use, the inputs, and maybe a brief critique of the outputs. And then in terms of feedback, you comment on the student's process and human judgment, not just the AI results. And obviously, in terms of academic integrity, focusing on transparency over detection and teach traceability. So the workflows then are task tool. Workflow is to define the task, name the tools, and outline the exact steps. Students will get the following instructions: what to do, where AI is allowed, and how to document those prompts and data. And then in terms of quality control, ask students to compare AI output with human reasoning and cite sources. As terms of assessment, aligned to outcomes, include a rubric row for disclosure and accountability to try and encourage use. So to keep evidence-wise, a lesson plan or brief showing where AI is used, prompt and workflow sheet to help understand tool risk and validation checklist, and some data handling notes, and a student sample with prompt history and reflection on reliability and ethics to meet those earlier uh, outcomes in terms of graduate attributes. So, as a reminder, we have our kind of external and sector guidance impacting our modules. The AHEAD framework then helps us to focus on being AI forward, which is foundations, applications, and pedagogy, and so on, and human centered mindset, ethics, governance, inclusion. We have our progression pathway, which we talked about already. In this example we looked at was apply. We integrate that with the Ulster's integrated curriculum development framework of knowing, doing, and being, and the Ulster graduate attributes. And ultimately, what we're suggesting is through the attributes alignment card that we just pick 2 to 3 AHEAD dimensions and map this to 1 or 2 activities or assessment elements within your overall module. And hopefully that is useful for you as you take the module forward.